Hello there, and welcome to Talking Nerdy, the show where we take various story arcs and events from current comics and we cover them. I'm your host, Obi-Wan Jabroni. Now, today's story is Spawn 319 through 322, continuing in the fallout of the events from Spawn's universe in one of our previous videos. Now, written by Todd McFarlane, with art by Carlo Barberi, and colors by J. David Ramos. Spawn and his companions continue their assault to stop the forces of heaven, hell, and everything in between from getting the power of the throne of hell. So, with that, let's start talking nerdy. First up, we have Spawn number 319. The world of Spawn's universe is blown open. After barely surviving the second trip in Omega Spawn's tropical island, Al has realized that there are even more shadow players than he thought. Who is Jericho, and what are his plans for Cy-Gor? Now, we open in a small Italian village, and we see a middle-aged restaurant owner serving his guests and then going to the wine cellar. Now, he approaches the wine rack and pulls a hidden lever. The wine rack's open to reveal a hidden room with two people chained up inside, begging for water. Now, he enters and tells them to be quiet. And suddenly the lights go out and a voice behind the man tells him to turn around. The man turns to see Spawn in the corner, and he flashes his teeth, revealing that he is a vampire, and lunges to attack Spawn. Spawn easily throws the vamp to the side and says, "The masters you serve, they think they've got you on the edge, that somehow I'm too weak to take them on. They'll tell their armies to continue their mission, trying to build the confidence of their warriors, and I hope they do, because they'll find out they have all been led to their own slaughter, because absent of light, is darkness like this prison room? I thrive. It's perfect for me." And the vamp lunges, and Spawn easily fights him off and knocks out his fangs. As Spawn pounds on him, he asks where his files are. And he tells Spawn, and then gets thrown against the wall and dies as Spawn turns to leave the room, sealing it behind him. He goes to the wine rack and breaks the lever bottle to find a key. Taking the key, he goes to the owner's office and breaks some floorboards to find a lockbox. Now, we switch to later that night at Detective Sam Burke's house. Sam awakens startled by Spawn lurking in the shadows of his bedroom, and Spawn tells him to give the file to his partner Twitch, saying it's a list of names and corporations tied to the shadow players that I'm hunting. Sam tells him Twitch is on vacation, but he will pass it along when he returns. Now, elsewhere in the city, we see the captive and brainwashed Cy-Gor being loaded into a semi-truck. Jericho pulls up talking to his mysterious boss on the telephone. He tells him that about the assault on the island by Cy-Gor and Spawn, and how they had captured Cy-Gor, but Spawn had got away. His boss tells him that they need Spawn by any means necessary, and hangs up as Cy-Gor's truck starts to drive away. Inside the truck, though, the mind control drugs are starting to wear off of Cy-Gor, and he starts to go into a frenzied rage, killing all the guards inside and causing the truck to flip over. As the truck slides to a halt, a new figure arrives wearing a green hooded cloak and a gas mask, saying, "I'll take it from here." And at that time, Cy-Gor's hands burst from inside the truck, and the man says, "Fight all you want, monster, but you don't leave my sight until Spawn arrives, and then we'll see who's got more power, a hell Spawn or a soul crusher made of flesh and bone." And that ends this issue. Taking us to Spawn number 320. We open in the streets of New York, Cy-Gor and Soul Crusher are having a brutal fight as Spawn makes his way towards them, saying, "It feels like I've been at war my entire life. As a kid, I've lived where your skin color determined everything about you. Your education, your job, your hope to advance was constantly being blocked. Those doing the blocking were always blind to their own actions. The only escape from it, at least the only thing that made sense to me, was joining the military, though I'd often wondered if things had been different if I hadn't have done that. But it's far too late for that. In the military, the army, I actually was at war, literally, helping to protect the country. Then they brought me closer into their game. Most of the black ops we were doing were bullshit missions based on shifting loyalties and pure greed. I had to fight my own commanders then. That's how I got killed. Fighting for my country, then to fight those who ran it. So I understood the rage running through Cy-Gor and why screaming at the top of your lungs is the only way to release your rage. He's been hunted and persecuted, like me, for merely existing. They killed him once, and maybe I should have left him that way. I might have been the only time for him he was ever at peace. But I didn't. I resurrected him for my needs. I never gave him a choice. Why? Why would I do that? Because of the wars. I now fight as Spawn. I thought Cy-Gor could help with that. Instead, he keeps paying for the sins of my actions. I was certain killing Clown and that angel would finally calm the waters against heaven and earth. Heaven and hell. Shit, did I get that wrong too? It's an all-out free-for-all with hundreds of them coming through the hole, every one of them wanting to show they're the toughest son of a bitch of the bunch. The way to do that is to kill me, so now everything in my life is just bait. Cy-Gor is no exception. And the worst part? We humans have joined the fray. Cy-Gor is just a prop twisted to this twisted madman. He doesn't care how much damage his augmented tech suit might cause, because the goal isn't about whether a prop lives or dies, or it has enough oxygen to breathe. None of that matters. The goal is to get my attention, pure and simple. It's why Soul Crusher is diving after Cy-Gor. He can't afford to lose his prop, his magnet to pull me in, because if he does, if he can't draw me out, then either God's warriors will know he's a fraud, or Hell's demons will consider him weak. And all the millions, Soul Crushers invested in their agenda, won't mean a goddamn thing. So it's time to let him know that he's succeeded his goal far beyond what he could have imagined. And I don't give a damn anymore that he is just a human. He's lucky for that for the moment. He's protected by his military-grade tech. Now, the fight has made its way into the ocean when Spawn arrives and starts to pound on the Soul Crusher with no effect. Soul Crusher tells him that he won't get through his shield and that he is also after the dead zones. Spawn knocks Soul Crusher back and sees Cy-Gor unconscious on the ocean floor. He swims over and throws Cy-Gor out of the water onto the dock and swims up to join him. Spawn goes over and sees that he is still breathing and helps him to his feet. But before they can make it more than a few steps, a red blast hit them both in the back. And they turn to see Soul Crusher standing behind them, saying, "No one leaves till I get what I need." Spawn gets up and charges at him to get only to get hit with another blast, knocking him onto his ass. Soul Crusher approaches and Spawn's chains lash out and drive into one of his eyes. He stumbles back and pulls out his knife, yelling. Pulls out his knife, yelling, and Spawn's chains wrap him up. And Spawn says, "A knife? You're coming at me with a fucking knife? Then what? You're gonna take my costume, become a hero, a Spawn? Is that what you want? Then here, take it. You want it so bad, take all of it till it chokes you. Then unlock the dead zones and do your worst. Stop talking about it, goddammit. Just do it. You want to become some messiah? Is that it? A god? By preying on an animal that wants no piece of this? Well, you can go to hell, and that's exactly where I plan on sending you. Cy-Gor doesn't belong to you." The chains glow green as Spawn's powers as they squeeze and crush the Soul Crusher to death. Spawn turns their backs to him as his last breaths escape, and they leave, ending this issue. Leading us to Spawn number 321. Now, we open at Spawn's hideout. Spawn, Mark, and She-Spawn are talking, and Spawn asks if anyone has seen medieval Spawn lately. Mark said he was detected on sensors about 5 hours ago, but his armor is still in the lab, and he asks Spawn what he wants them to do. Spawn replies, "I don't want you to do anything, 'cause you can't. That's the problem, and it's one of many." Like, who the fuck is medieval Spawn anyway? Why'd he come to my rescue on Omega Island? And how'd he even know I was there to begin with? Remember, he tried to kill me just before that. I don't know who he is, what his motivations are, or whose side he's on, but that's not that's not my concern. What I'm concerned about. Not him specifically. This place is supposed to be undetectable, impenetrable. Instead, I've got strangers coming and going. And what about the freak or the curse? They disappeared too. None of this happened before any of you came here, and I'm not willing to compromise my security any longer. So I need you to leave, both of you. I need you out of here. You've both become liabilities. And She-Spawn and Mark get pissed and say that they do whatever he wants, whenever he wants, while their family has no clue where they even are. He responds, "You're right. I don't care about your family. I care about surviving. About living long enough to wipe out the scum who killed my wife, the same enemies that killed Susan. We'll never get those answers if our enemies can come to this place whenever they want. I don't trust there won't be more breaches. The only way to fix it is to not have anyone here in the first place." Spawn turns and storms out and goes to his lab and goes over to the files he got in Italy. We switch to later that night. Spawn is following a human that has ties to Hell's forces to his home. The man gets home and sits in his recliner, but seconds later Spawn appears in front of him and slams him to the ground and demands that he gives him the files. The man says it's in a safety deposit box in Pittsburgh, and Spawn turns to leave and is attacked by two dogs. He turns and stares at the dogs, and they both stop and sit at his commands. And he hears a noise downstairs, and he goes down there to check. And he sees a girl chained up and crying. He goes over and touches her forehead. A psychic meld is ignited. Is ignited when he touches her head, as images of her past flash by like some flickering movie. The vibrant, cheerful teenager, barely 16 years old, is filled with endless wonderment until the rainy afternoon when she was painfully shoved into the rear of a stranger's van. Someone not acting on the orders of his master, but instead on his own craven needs. Becoming his slave, his pet for the past 4 years, treated no better than his own dogs. She resigned herself to being a toy, to be played with and abused by a monster. He beat, starved, and raped her over and over and over again. Rarely concerned about her physical well-being or mental health, he tried to beat it out of her, but she gave birth to her daughter anyway, which only infuriated Paul even more, so each beating became worse. She'll walk with a limp and never see clearly out of her eye for the rest of her life, and the emotional toll taken on her will never heal. He took someone with kindness and beauty and broke her because he could. Just because he could. And Spawn takes his hand away and says he's so sorry, and he snaps and screams, causing a blackout for miles around. Now, later on at Spawn's hideout, Mark is at the computers trying to get more data on the new Hellspawn sightings. And Spawn walks in, and Mark snaps at him, still pissed about the argument earlier. He gives Spawn a new file and storms off to his room. As Mark enters his room, he sees that Medieval's helmet is sitting on his bed. Confused, he takes it back to the lab and sets it with the rest of the armor, and heads back to his room. When he enters again, he sees the helmet is somehow back on his bed, and he slowly picks up the helmet and puts it on this time, transforming him into the Medieval Spawn once more. Later on, Spawn's feeling guilty for blowing up on Mark, and goes to his room to find him, but he enters to find that no one is in there at all. And that ends this issue. Taking us to our final issue, Spawn number 322. Now, we opened at Paul's darkened house. Spawn has went back for the girl from the last issue, and as soon as he arrives, he takes control of Paul's dogs and attacks. He beats him around until Paul grabs a shotgun and tries to shoot Spawn in the chest. Spawn smiles at Paul and takes the shot and laughs. Paul stumbles back and is smashed by Spawn's chains and knocks him out. Spawn goes down to the basement, changing into his Al Simmons form on his way down the stairs, and he picks the girl up and melds into the shadows and appears in a doctor's office. Spawn drops the woman off and leaves back into the shadows. Later that night, Paul wakes up chained to the ceiling, and we learn that he is a vampire. Paul sputters and pukes up blood and bugs, and Spawn picks up a rat and dangles it in front of Paul and says, "Today's Friday, Paul, and you haven't eaten in nearly 5 days. For a vampire, that can be pretty severe. No blood, no food. It hurts, doesn't it? Not eating for so long, like you made that poor girl suffer. That's right. Watch that mouse, because wherever your body is trying to do to compensate for your lack of energy, I made those those roaches eat it away from your inside. If you don't eat soon, you'll die. I'm gonna give you a choice, though. That mouse is fresh blood, and down that skinny hallway, there's lots more blood on the other side. I know you can smell it. I'm also sure you noticed there's no spikes on my costume. I decided to put them to another use today. Your decision right now is whether you're going to let those bugs eat you alive or seek out your nourishment you need on the other side of that wall. If it'll make your choice easier, we can speed this up. There, now the bugs can smell you again." Spawn releases Paul from his chains and throws the rat down the narrow hallway. Paul sprints after the rat and squeezes into the hall. He finds all of the Spawn's spikes sticking out of the walls inside, and he goes on anyway, squeezing through as the spikes rip and cut at his whole body with every step. He makes it through, a bloody mess, and Spawn meets him on the other side with the dogs, saying, "You look horrible, Paul. Guess I've been a bit abusive to you, like you were to your dogs. I can commune with animals, and I can tell you've beaten and abused them too. They haven't eaten in 5 days either, you know. And they're starving. Isn't that right, boys? Here, this key unlocks the door on the other side. To leave here, you'll need to go back through that passage again. But I know I promised your dogs I'd feed them on Friday, and I'm not breaking that promise." Paul grabs the key and runs back into the spiked hall as Spawn drops the chains holding the dogs, and they go chasing after Paul down the narrow spike-filled hallway, ending this issue. I hope you enjoyed the video this week. Be sure to join us next week as we cover Star Wars War of the Bounty Hunters Chapter 4. Thanks for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. Feedback is always welcome. Also remember to share out our videos and help spread the Jabroni Nerd Network brand. Now, you can also follow us on the Jabroni Nerd Network Facebook page or on Twitter at Jabroni Network. So, until next week, guys, keep talking nerdy.